a slave. I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free.
In June of 2014, 11 high school students from Albany, New York flew to Jackson, Mississippi, where we spent 8 days learning about the civil rights movement. We visited places where history was made and met with veterans of the Mississippi movement. We also participated in the 50th anniversary celebration of Freedom Summer. Freedom Summer was the project that brought 1,000 volunteers to the state of Mississippi. That summer, they worked with local activists to bring an end to the Jim Crow system and empower the state's African American citizens. This is the story of our journey.
Once the students had signed up for the trip, we had a series of meetings where I first told them the basic outlines of what we were going to be doing, what my expectations were of them, and then the task became much more to provide them with some background, to have a better understanding about what they were going to be seeing and experiencing. Reggie Harris stopped by one afternoon and began teaching some of the songs that were a part of the civil rights movement.
What I do. The 1964 Freedom Summer event is something I talk about a lot in my work as I travel around the country, and I sing songs about the civil rights movement, and I tell the stories of the civil rights movement because there are so many parallels to our past affecting what we're doing today and what we'll do in the future. So these songs are very old. They come from the time of slavery. They have, many of the other songs have evolved since then, but primarily they were created by people who weren't reading the words. So I can feed you the words. Oh freedom, oh freedom, oh freedom over me. Sing back to me. Oh freedom, oh freedom, oh freedom over me. Let's do that one again. We said, oh freedom, oh freedom, oh freedom over me, oh freedom over me. And before I be a slave, and before I be a slave, I be buried in my grave. I be buried in my grave, and go home to my Lord and be free. And go home to my Lord and be free.
For the trip, I'm kind of most excited to be in a place that I've never been before in the summer, where I get to eat a lot of interesting food and talk to a lot of interesting people about stuff I don't really know about. But I also don't know a lot about African American history in the South, besides what we're taught in school, which is really kind of limited. So I figured that I would learn a lot about how these things affect the South today if I went on the trip.
Found out about this and I was asked to join, and once I found out more information about the entire trip and the whole experience, I was very excited to be a part of it, so I said yes.
Why did you decide to come on the trip?
Because I wanted to get out of town.
Really? Come on.
Because I'm interested in just learning more about civil rights.
I'm most excited about going to the college, Dougaloo, because, I'm going to college soon, and, I want to see what college life is all about.
Well, we've learned a lot about the civil rights movement and history, especially this year since we're studying U.S. history. But I think it'll be interesting to see the other sides and the parts that we haven't learned about it.
So are you excited for your child to go? Oh, got it. What do you hope for your children to learn?
Oh, are you kidding? I think that this is going to be such an important tour for them. I'm excited about it. Aren't you excited?
Yes.
And they're amazing kids. I'm psyched for them. This is going to be great.
Talking about Jackson, ever since the fire went out, I'm going to Jackson. I'm gonna mess around. Yeah, I'm going to Jackson. Look out, Jackson Town.
Hey, let's go on down to Jackson. Go ahead and wreck your head.
Where are we going, Linnea?
We are going to the church for memorial service 4. I don't know.
Goodman, Cheney, and Schwerner.
I know my roots. And God sent me home 6 years ago because he said they were destroying the man-child in the state of Mississippi. And so I was expecting you all last night. Since you're here this morning, God put it on my heart to share the truth about what it is that you all really need to take back from here. The work is not done. It's a lot of work. But at the same time, our children are too precious to just continue to leave behind. Y'all enjoy your caravan, enjoy your trip, and whatever we can do to assist you, God bless you.
We have a group that's coming together to join you here.
Oh, they're all coming up here? Oh, gosh.
Oh, don't just sit there. Get up here.
What y'all gonna say?
Rise, people. Hey.
I don't know.
Our group came together from Albany High. Paul Murray, professor at Siena, has been meeting with the group for a couple of months. I've been on the road most of the time, so I got to meet with this group actually once. But I happen to know that they are really good singers. Well, it's the light of mine. I'm gonna let it shine. It's the light of mine. I'm gonna let it shine. Oh, now it's the light of mine. I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine. Okay, now in my heart. I'm gonna let it shine. Okay, now in my heart. I'm gonna let it shine.
Our first day in Mississippi was the 50th anniversary of the murders of civil rights workers Andrew Goodman, James Cheney, and Mickey Schwerner. In 1964, they drove from Meridian to Neshoba County to investigate the burning of a church that was going to be used for a freedom school. They were arrested, and when released from jail, were ambushed by the Ku Klux Klansmen, taken to a deserted country road, and executed. Our journey began at First Union Missionary Baptist Church and included stops at James Cheney's gravesite and Rock Cut Road, where the murders took place.
The smarts. We sure have the love in many of our hearts to be first in this United States. Yeah. And we have to move forward. Yeah. And we have to not let these things like this continue to happen. Yeah. So we're here today, not only for just Cheney, Goodman, and Schwerner, but all Mississippi monks. We also lift up all of our colleagues who have gone on. And today we're going to leave this place and travel on now to Rock Cut Road to the murder site.
Every kind of imaginable torture you can imagine happened here in the wee hours of the morning. After they had traveled all that riding we were just doing, those three young men, Cheney, Goodman, and Schwerner, was with these white men, going through torture for hours, much longer than we just rode. I know you're tired, but they rode hours, from something like 9 o'clock at night to 5 o'clock in the morning. They rode and was tortured every step of the way. And finally, they were brought here, shot and killed.
We then drove to Canton, Mississippi, where we met Robert Chin, a local activist who told us about the importance of the Freedom House, the headquarters for the movement in 1964. The Freedom House is being renovated as a museum of the civil rights movement. We visited Freedom House on the first day it was open to the public.
In the process of staying there, I was close to what? The Freedom House. And I didn't got a divorce because I stayed at the Freedom House too much. Time I get off of work, I would run to the Freedom House. And the folks that stayed at the Freedom House didn't have to worry about being safe, because this was their mother and daddy right here.
Oh.
With nobody coming up in the project. Including nobody. Because the project folks is like sisters and brothers, and we protected each other.
Okay, this is Zacchaeus.
Oh, wait.
This is Diamond. This is Diamond. This is Mary.
How are you? How are you?
Nice to meet you.
Pleased to meet you, my wife.
His name is James Meredith. Now, I don't know if any of you know the name James Meredith. But James Meredith was the first black student to attend, but the governor of the state and many of his supporters tried to prevent you from attending. And there was a riot that night, that first night that you arrived on the campus. A couple people died, many people were injured, but you went on and you graduated from the University of Mississippi.
Everybody talk about celebrating what happened 50 years ago. If there's ever been a need for things to be done, it's now. I'm gonna shut up. I think that's a big enough hint.
We got a gentleman with his hand.
Yes, sir.
What do you mean by lie anymore?
Everybody talk about how much progress blacks made, particularly in Mississippi. It's the biggest lie, and everybody who tell it knows it's a lie. And I promise God I wasn't no lie no more.
And moving forward with any movement, you have to have good, hard work and solidarity, and somebody has to keep the struggle going. So we're gonna die out, we're gonna be gone bye-bye. But you gotta leave here, you gotta keep the struggle going. Don't let nobody tell you because you white, you more than the black person. Don't let no black person tell you that because he black, you more than the white person. There's no such thing as that. We all God's children. We should all love each other. How in the world we gonna go forward when we fighting all the time about color?
It's nice to meet you. Even nice to meet you.
There are like two things that stuck out with me the most. Meeting James Meredith really stuck out with me. He was just like, I don't know, he was just so emotional and like, but stoic at the same time. Like, I don't know, like just like his whole, it was like right, like, and you could like tell that he's like been through a lot and he just like doesn't want to share. Like, it was just like so painful that he's just trying to like be rid of
past it.
Yeah, you know, like he doesn't want to relive it at all. It was
Going to all these different like museums and what was the place that we went to? The place all covered in red paint. I forgot what it was. It was
Freedom House.
Freedom House. So I thought it was really interesting how there were lots of like younger people dedicating their lives too, because they didn't live through the civil rights movement, right? But on Tuesday, we toured the Mississippi Delta, a cotton-growing region known as the home of the blues. During the 1960s, it was a battleground for the civil rights movement. Our guide was Miss Margaret Block. During Freedom Summer, she and her brother Sam worked as field secretaries for the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee in several Delta counties. Miss Block began by reading some of her poetry that reflects her outspoken political views.
Yeah, this is the first piece I'm going to read to you all. It's called America, America. America is the biggest rogue out of all of the nations. They're running the country like it's a big plantation. Corruption and confusion is the American way. There are high-class criminals running America today. Do you remember Jack?
It was the 31st of August in 1962.
We stopped in Ruleville, the small town that was home to Fannie Lou Hamer, one of the most important civil rights organizers in the state. When Miss Hamer tried to register to vote in 1962, she was fired from her job and kicked off the plantation where she lived. She was shot at, arrested, and brutally beaten, but that did not stop her. She was a tireless worker for equal rights and an eloquent advocate for the poor people of Mississippi. We visited her grave and the memorial garden constructed in her memory. To honor Fannie Lou Hamer, we sang one of her favorite songs, Go Tell It on the Mountain.
Go tell it on the mountain to let my people go.
Who's that yonder dressed in black?
Let my people go.
It must be the hypocrites turning back.
Let my people go.
So right now we're doing some stuff on the Mississippi Freedom Trail. We just visited Fannie Lou Hamer's memorial site, and it's really beautiful there. Like birds are chirping, it's just like green and kind of fertile, and it's just, you know, kind of felt something being there. And now
How do you feel looking at all this stuff?
It's history, you know. It's very moving. It definitely is relevant, especially for the young folks, even for myself. It depicts, you know, from how far we've come to where we are now.
Miss Block directed us to Money, Mississippi. We saw the dilapidated store where in 1955, 14-year-old Emmett Till made a smart remark to the white woman working in the store. That night, 2 men took Emmett from his uncle's house, murdered him, and threw his body in the Tallahatchie River. From there, we visited the Emmett Till Museum located in an old cotton gin in Glendora, Mississippi. The museum contains displays about Emmett Till, his murder, and the impact his death had on the nation. The exhibits had a strong impact on the students.
I could not take it. Like, I was holding back tears. It was really, really sad. Like, it just, like, has a big impact on, like, the youth. Another part was when, I don't know if anybody saw it, was like a painting of him and his mom. And next to it had like a little like paragraph about the day he left, and he said goodbye to his mom, and she was like, take the watch that your father had and the ring. He took the ring and he said, he gave her back the watch, and he said like, I don't need the watch, I'll be back soon or whatever. And that was the last time she saw him alive. It was just like really sad like that.
I was 14 and I was an idiot. Like, he was a kid who was just being stupid, and these men literally defiled. Like they were so bent on showing their power and keeping the status quo that they literally abused a child.
Yeah.
Dr. Beverly Hogan, the president of Tougaloo College, welcomed us to her campus and introduced us to Tougaloo's role as a safe haven for civil rights workers during Freedom Summer. Tougaloo students were among the first Mississippians to demonstrate against segregation. When they sat in at the Jackson Public Library in 1961, most of the leading figures in the civil rights movement spoke at Woodworth Chapel on campus. Because of its history, Tougaloo was the site of the 50th anniversary celebration of Freedom Summer. The celebration was partly a reunion of activists who had come to Mississippi 50 years ago, and also a discussion on how to continue the movement today.
Really excited. I just want the day to start. I want to go to the workshops and watch the movies, and I'm just excited for the day. So, yeah.
And the song says, oh, there's only one God that made us all. Governor Bryan, oh no, you know you can't just talk.
Maybe it started when those World War II veterans came home, MC Moore and C.C. Bryan and Aaron Heary and Medgar Evers, who realized they would not take the same treatments in Mississippi that they had just fought for abroad. Maybe it started when those courageous women, Winston and Dory Hudson, in Harmony, Mississippi, would be on guard at night. That if you drove around that curve in Harmony, Mississippi, those 2 women who were sitting on the porch with a shotgun. Maybe it started with a group of students from Fisk College, and Shaw University, and Howard, and Morehouse, and Tougaloo, and Jackson State began to organize and decided to come together under a banner called the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. Maybe it started when there was an intergenerational understanding that those World War II veterans, those strong women, and those students should come together under an umbrella. It is through that intergenerational model that we stand here today. So when I look at this diverse room, when I understand this conference and all of its diversity, we are a blessed and rich people. We are Freedom Summer. We are the Civil Rights Movement. And the Civil Rights Movement did not start in the 60s. It's a continuum that continues today.
One of the people we met was Joan Mulholland, a freedom rider who came to Mississippi in 1961 and stayed to work in the freedom movement. We saw the film An Ordinary Hero that her son had made about Joan's years in the movement.
But the difference is that I have a son who's a filmmaker. And he manipulated me into this. It was going to be about, a number of people made the point that it wasn't just King of Parks. Could I give him some contact information? Well, and I know what he was going to do with that. So, for the younger folks here, remember, manipulation will get you a long way.
Aside from the heat, I love it. Yes, I'm just so moved by this experience. I'm learning so much, especially because I don't learn this in detail in school. What I learned about the Civil Rights Movement is Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, and that's about it. So just seeing the true heroes who you don't get as much recognition and meeting some of them and just learning their stories is just so powerful and so moving. So I'm glad to be here.
And prior to that, my family I was born in the Civil Rights Movement by virtue of my mother having been very active. So I was raised in the movement, and things got so intense that we had armed guards hidden all around our house, under the house, in the ditches and trees, because my mother was constantly under threat. But that particular night, there was a big meeting here in Jackson, so just about everyone was here in Jackson. And shortly after 9 o'clock, when the babysitter had just put us to bed, someone threw, I think, 20 sticks of dynamite on our front porch. And the bomb exploded, collapsed the roof in the room where my sister and I were sleeping.
Keep your eyes on the prize and hold on. Why don't you hold on? Hold on. Hold on. Hold on. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on.
That's the stuff. We've been singing songs every day. Every day we sing at least 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 songs.
Yep.
And so now we're fluent with them. It's kind of like what
I sing them in my sleep.
Yeah, right. It's sort of like what are we drumming to? So Izzy said, yeah. She goes, I for my math test. She goes, I was singing, I ain't gonna let no math test bring me down.
What just happened, Miss Mary?
I need to see the picture. Look at me.
What just happened?
See, just that amazing, really moving presentation.
Oh my God, you're so
by the Freedom Summer.
kiss me. Are you really filming this?
Now, I met this guy named John from Ithaca, and he does this program that has a lot to do with environmental justice. It's like 60 different organizations that are all over New York, but based in Ithaca. And because I'm really interested in environmental justice, and I want to go to Ithaca for college, and Ithaca's like a community that I feel a lot of connection to, it was really nice. So we were talking about environmental justice and what it is.
So I was just kind of focused more on the civil rights aspect of it and how they helped in the movement. And Bob, he had these 2 license plates
and they were really interesting because you could pick one of the two to like put on the front of your car instead of having like the actual number. And the first one was the Confederate flag, and then the second one, it says State of Progress, and it has Mississippi, like the shape of the state next to it. And it was just really contradictory, and it really showed the two different sides of the movement and how people thought.
In my feet, while I run this race, guide my feet, while I run this race, guide my feet.
Guide my feet now.
While I run this race, 'cause I want to run this race.
Oh, hold my hand.
Hold my hand,
Hold my hand, Lord.
while I run this race. Hold my hand while I run this race. Hold my hand.
Hold my hand, Lord.
While I run this race, 'cause I don't want to run this race in vain. Guide my feet.
Guide my feet now.
While I run this race, 'cause I don't want to run this race in vain.
Oh, hold my hand.
Hold my hand
Hold my hand, Lord.
while I run this race. Hold my hand while I run this race. Hold my hand.
When I saw Dr. Martin Luther King in the casket, the picture of that when we was at the museum last night, it really shook me to my core, and it was scary. It was surreal seeing him like that. And then there was a picture next to it of his wife in the bed after the funeral, and she had a portrait of her above the bed when she was younger, and you can see the difference, and you can see all her worry lines from the whole movement, how it got her, what made her distressed and stuff.
Best parts, in my opinion, of the trip so far was going to the art and photography gallery at the Mississippi Museum of Art. And I just learned so much, and going and seeing the photography of the movement was just so moving for me.
The Tougaloo College TV station, WLOO, was making a documentary about the Freedom Summer celebration. They filmed us singing and interviewed Izzy and Liam.
Big energy in 3, 2, 1.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Oh, this little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Everywhere I go.
So, we are almost on our last day here in Mississippi. It's our very last night. It's pretty upsetting, but I can definitely see a change in the kids. You know what?
I would like to say, keep your minds open. I would like to say, be aware. I would like to say, check your sources. For me, it's been a deepening experience. As I said, I'm on a pilgrimage every year pretty much in November, and of course my touring also brings me down here, but this is a very different trip for me, and largely it's because of you.
So, the other thing that I hope the students gain from the experience is that Albany is not the only stop for them, that there are other places that they can go. They can be anything that they want to be or choose to be. The fact is, 50 years later, we are still dealing with education issues. We're still dealing with healthcare and voting rights issues.
Coming into the study tour, I don't think that we were aware, or at least I was not aware, that Freedom Summer was about registering voters and not just about like the segregation aspect of the civil rights movement. Voter registration was one of the main emphases of Freedom Summer because the Black community needed that sort of political power and involvement in order to be able to further any progress that they wanted to make, because in Mississippi all of the political systems and like the courts and the police systems, they were all run by white people, and the blacks didn't have the power to elect any of their officials to put into office to help change anything.
Well, something that I really took away from the trip is that the Freedom Summer was mostly a political movement. I didn't realize how deeply rooted it was with the political scene, and how it was mostly about registering people to vote so that they can be considered real citizens, full citizens.
We went to the Emmett Till Museum. Like, I was really moved by it, and it's like, it's a different feeling when you're like actually there. And I just want to, like, all the people that like back home, like, that aren't informed about this stuff that went on, because we're never informed about like details that happened during the civil rights movement. So I just want to like let them know like what I learned, and like to always appreciate like education and like simple stuff like vote, what we think is simple, like voting, to like appreciate it, because like people had to fight really hard for that and stuff, and like risk their lives.
James Meredith, because everybody else that was involved in it, they were willing to speak about what happened, and you know, he was just like kind of closed. He didn't want to really talk about it. He just wanted, if we had questions, he wanted to answer them, but he was really like stubborn, like uptight, like he didn't really want to talk about it, and that stood out to me because like it was just so weird. Like, he didn't want to talk about it. He was just like, he didn't want to bring up the past anymore, I guess. So.
I learned that there are many people, way more people that we learn about in school. Like, we only learn about the main people, like Martin Luther King and all those people. And there were even some white people, Jews, that were helping a lot.
I learned that other places, like this college, Tougaloo College, sheltered many African Americans from the violence of whites back then, which was really surprising, because in my elective, I did not know colleges would shelter other people from the violence. The president of the college, right?
Dr. Hogan.
Yeah, Dr. Hogan. She was an interesting person. Like, she took time out of her day just to come eat with us, and that explains a lot about her character. And meeting her just really impacted me.
I learned that Lyndon Johnson was not that much of a good guy, because in our schools we're kind of taught like Lyndon Johnson was one of the good presidents, and I mean, I guess there are like two sides to his character, but in the documentary I saw about Freedom Summer, they made him seem kind of like evil, and I guess there are two sides to everyone's character, but it was kind of interesting to me.
I pretty much learned all my knowledge about how people were killed, the importance of the deaths, especially of Cheney, Goodman, and Schwerner, and how present-day problems resonate with the Freedom Summer. Me and Isaac's volunteer's name was Bob, and he had a big impact on it because he kind of seemed like he would be very similar to me in the Freedom Summer. He said he came down and he didn't glorify it at all. Many of the stories were like really moving and stuff, but they were very like glorified, like the noose was around my neck and they were gonna ride off and like kill me. He said nothing like that really happened. A lot of it was just walking around getting rejected by the people of Mississippi for signatures.
After 8 days in Mississippi, we were ready to go back to New York.
And where are we going?
We are going home.
Are you excited?
Yes, kind of. A little bit.
Why are you only kind of excited?
Because I didn't want to leave Mississippi. But I also want to go home.
Guess what, everyone?
What?
We're home!
Yes, finally. I was so happy. I can't even hear myself right now.
How you feeling, Jaquan? Are you excited to be home?
I'm so glad we had this time together. Now it's time to say
farewell.
Good night. Good night.
I don't see you guys for like a long
We home! We home!
y'all.
Yes.
Yes, we home.
Over here.
Run.
Are you the last one back?
Ooh, so you were there?
No, I wasn't.
Oh.
Came in from Washington.
We're back?
Hugs.
That's home.
Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom's over me. And before I be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free.
Ooh, she knows it.
Turn me right. Turn me right. Turn me right. No, turn me right. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me right. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching up the freedom line. Ain't gonna let segregation turn me right. Turn me right. Turn me right. No, turn me right. Ain't gonna let segregation
I'll let you know whenever I want to.
Whatever I want to do, I'll let you
Megan's quick. Yeah.
Oh, no.
Yep. Yep.
You know. Stop. You know I can't answer.
All Dr. Murray ordered was a ginormous chocolate shake. That's it.
Well, that's it.
So boring.
Thanks, Sam.
You didn't even get a fun shake. How is your day going and how's all this?
That's cool. I'm Liam.
He is Liam.
Oh, really?
Can't even use that. Go ahead, Liam.
I'm Liam.
What are you learning today? How are you feeling?
My name is Liam.
We shall not be moved just like a tree that's planted by the water. We shall not be moved. We're fighting for our freedom. We shall not be moved.